All right. Well, Yah is speaking in this place. He's moving. You can know that because even if you don't feel him moving, the messages are always concurrent. And so that's how we know. And don't forget about the snacks on the top if you must, if you need to have something to sustain yourself through. Because we're right about at end time and I'm just starting. So, all right, so some of you weren't here last week. And so last week we spoke about some things. We talked about that there's nothing new under the sun, and that which has been shall be. We also talked about how he declares the end from the beginning. And we also talked about that he did that and he wrote those things down and have them lived out for those upon whom the end of the age would come. We also talked about Deuteronomy, and I don't remember if I read the verse or not, but I have it in my notes about Moses being a picture of Messiah. And Deuteronomy 18:15 is the one that he just used about I will raise up unto you a prophet like unto myself. That's Deuteronomy 18:15. And so as we go on, we need to understand a few things. One is that the Almighty works in patterns. He has these things happen in patterns, so that as the patterns happen over and over again and we start to see these things, we can understand not only what has happened, but what is happening and what will happen, because the patterns always do that. He will cause events to reoccur, but maybe in a different time span. Right? Abraham went into Egypt because of famine. I think we talked about that. Israel also, the whole group, went in to Egypt because of famine, although they stayed there much longer. It was plagues that brought Abram at the time, soon to be Abraham, out. It was plagues that brought the Israelites out. We also have to understand that he works in layers. And maybe you haven't seen this before, but he layers things together. So our example is going to be Messiah's death. Right? We know that he fulfilled the Passover. Right? He died on the day of Passover. But he also fulfilled the morning and evening offering. He was put on the cross at the time of the morning offering, and he passed away at the time of the evening offering. So he partially or completely fulfilled that. Same death, though. This is all one event. He also partially or fully completed the red heifer. With the red heifer, you're supposed to put it on a certain type of wood, and then he had the crown of thorns, which a lot of people say or believe, and I do, that it was the same kind of wood that the crown of thorns was made out of. You were supposed to put scarlet thread or material on the red heifer. They put the scarlet robe on him. And you were also supposed to put hyssop. And when they gave him the vinegar, or wine or whatever it is, they used hyssop. So all those elements were applied to him, and it was outside of the camp, just like the red heifer was supposed to be. So we have that, again, in this one event. He also had, and maybe you haven't seen this, a partial fulfillment of the Yom Kippur sacrifice, because you had Messiah, who was the Son of God, and then you had also Barabbas, whose name meant the Son of God, and they were brought up, and lots were cast, and one was released to go free, and the other one was offered up to the Most High. So we can see now how in just one event he can fulfill many things. And so we have to remember that. And so when I'm thinking about doing a teaching, as I was asked to do, or if I'm told from him to do, I always start with a question. And so the question that I always ask him is, what do you want to say to your people? And so the short answer is gird yourself. That's the short answer. But why must we do this? How come we have to gird ourselves? And that's because of where we are in history. So we're going to look back again. Some of this is going to be a little repetitive, but some people weren't here, and you have to see these things. So Moses brought the people out of Egypt, right? And he did that. He taught them Yah's commandments and laws and statutes and judgments. And then they rebelled, and they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And everyone did what was right in their own eyes. And we know this because of Deuteronomy. Moses says that when you go into the land, you will not do what's right in your own eyes as we do today. So they were doing what was right in their own eyes. And so then we see there was grace in the wilderness also, because he could have just, right, the guy who was gathering on Shabbat, he just got taken out right away. But if he took them all out, there would be no one to go in. So there was grace in the wilderness. But before entering the land, Moses retaught them the law, right? We get to Deuteronomy, and he starts going through and saying, okay, we're going to go through this again. And he starts giving them the commandments again. And then, of course, Joshua, or Yahushua, if you will, takes them into the land. Well, they lived that out in a certain period of time. And so now we've been living this out again, and maybe we haven't even seen it. But when Messiah came, he brought the people out of sin with his sacrifice. At the same time, he began again teaching them the law, or the proper application of the law, and starting to strip away the traditions and everything. But he began teaching them the law. And of course, the apostles went, and they were teaching not only his offering and how that brings us out of our Egypt of sin, but they also taught the commandments. Even Paul, of course we know his words get twisted a little, but they were teaching the commandments also. And they all died off. And a time came when his body rebelled, right? Kicked out a lot of the Jewish brethren and the ones who were keeping the commandments, and they rebelled. And so spiritually, since that time, we've been wandering in the wilderness. And we've been doing, for the most part, what's right in our own eyes as Christians, trying to do good, but the way we would see it to be done. But in 1967, some interesting things happened. One, we had the 6-Day War, and the Jews regained Jerusalem. But that is also the year that the Messianic movement took off. And so since that time, the Messianic movement has been proliferating. And so what's been happening in the Messianic movement? We've been relearning the commandments. So since about 1967, we've been right back where we were reading right now. We've been at the beginning of Deuteronomy, and Moses, if you will, or really Messiah, being pictured by Moses, has been reteaching us the commandments. And so that's where we've been. Layered upon this reoccurring events to the children is another one, because what happens to the fathers happens to the kids, and so you are Israel, spiritually or physically, you're Israel. So the things that happen to the forefathers of Israel will happen to the descendants of Israel. So not only have we been going through that, but simultaneously, as we see he layers things, we've been in our own physical Egypt because we're in exile. Where are we supposed to be? We're supposed to be in the promised land, and that's the eventual goal. He's going to take us to the promised land. But we're not there. We're in exile, living in the land of our captivity. And so when they went to Babylon, they probably did this in Egypt too, but when they went to Babylon, he said, pray for the prosperity of where you're going. Make lives, settle down, have children. You know, they were there a long time. I mean, imagine if you were just an infant when you got taken to Babylon. When that 70 years were up, you were now 70 years old or around there. You had kids, you had grandkids, and that's all you knew was Babylon. And then it's time to go back, and you're like, what? I have to go back and do work and rebuild, and I'm comfortable here. And so that's where we're at also. We're in Egypt also. Yeah, they had the hard labor, and I'm not trying to belittle that, but when they came out, one of their complaints was, why did you take us out? We remember when we had onions and leeks and all this food. So no one was like, wait, we didn't have that stuff. What are you talking about? So they had provision, but their workload was hard. And that's also kind of where we are. We're content. We've been here. Our families have come up here, and we're working. We're praying for the prosperity of our nation, whatever nation we might be in. We pray for our leaders. But at the same time, our workload has been being increased, and we have to work more to get less. They take more taxes out. The price of food goes up. And so that's also what's been going on. And so, we'll continue to do this, but over time, we've been knowing this, and so we've been starting to pray for our deliverance. Right? We want Messiah to come back, and we don't know when that will happen, but I know it's been the prayer of my heart. I want you to come back. I want to see your kingdom in fullness on this earth, with you physically on the throne and ruling, and not having to worry about all the attacks of the enemy and everything. And so, as he said back then, surely he has heard our cry. And so Yah is about to do two things simultaneously. One, he's going to bring us out of our current physical Egypt and into the wilderness with a mighty hand. As he says in Jeremiah 16, "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that it shall no more be said, Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he had driven them. And I will bring them again into their land that I gave unto their fathers." And as we discussed, every matter has to be on 2 or 3 witnesses, right? Not just one. And so he gives us 2 witnesses of this. Same book, Jeremiah 23, if you want to write these down. Again, first one was Jeremiah 16:14 is where it starts. 23:7. Same book. Different chapter and verse. "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that they shall no more say, Yahweh liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country and from all the countries whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land." And that, we know, has not happened yet, but it will at some point. And he also says, and I believe he said to us today, I've had this written down for at least a week and a half, and he gave some progressive things to Russ here as we were here today. And this is in Ezekiel in chapter 20, starting at 33. And we're going to go to 38. "As I live, saith Yahweh Elohim, surely with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out, I will rule over you. And I will bring you out from the people, and I will gather you out of the countries wherein you are scattered with a mighty hand and with a stretched out arm and with fury poured out. And I will bring you into the wilderness of the people, and there I will plead with you face to face, like as I pled with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt. So will I plead with you, saith Yahweh Elohim, and I will cause you to pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant, and I will purge out from among you the rebels, and them that transgress against me. I will bring them forth out of the country where they sojourn, and they shall not enter into the land of Israel. And you shall know that I am Yahweh." And so that's one of the things he's going to do. He's going to bring us out of our physical Egypt where we're at now with all of our concerns and all the burdens that they're laying on us. And he's going to bring us into the wilderness, and he will purge those that step to the right and left. And that will be according to his doing and not ours, of course. At the same time, he's going to begin the process of taking us into the promised land. As he's been having us regathering and having us learn Moses over these last 50 years, we're getting to the point where he's going to say, okay, it's time to go into the promised land. And so that's what we're going to do. Not of our own doing, of course. I wouldn't necessarily recommend packing up and getting on a plane and going to Israel unless he tells you. Just stay where you are and he'll guide you. But when he comes back again, of course, every eye will look up and we'll see and we'll be caught up and he'll take us. So we don't necessarily have to worry about that. But he's going to start that process. And as when our fathers entered the land, it's not going to be a cakewalk, right? And so we have to prepare for these things. When they went into the land, it was war. For them, it was physical war and spiritual war, but mostly physical. For us, it'll be physical war and spiritual war. Probably not so much physical, more spiritual. And especially within ourselves. Because we are going to need to lay aside the things from that backpack as we go. Because we don't want to be on, we don't want to be on that side. And so, as I was speaking to him about what he wanted to say, these are the things he started telling me. We have to prepare now. Small things, maybe, but things are still relatively good. And so, if we can't do these small things when it's relatively good, how are we going to do these small things when it's not relatively good? And so the word specifically that he gave me for the community, and I think I gave this kind of last week, but we'll go through again. And again, this is an individual thing. It's also for the community. When I first said, what do you want to say to your people? This was word for word what he said. Be strong and of a good courage, for unto this people shalt thou divide for inheritance the land, which I swear unto their fathers to give them. Only be thou strong and very courageous, that thou may observe to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that thou may prosper whithersoever thou go. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, but thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou may observe to do according to all that is written therein. For then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For Yahweh thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goes. And so that's the word. Be strong, be courageous. If you're not meditating in his word day and night, now when it's easy, begin now when it's easy, so that you can also meditate in his word day and night when it's rough. Don't step to the right, don't step to the left. Because a shift is coming. And that shift is those two things we've discussed. Us being brought out into the collective wilderness, if you will, and us starting the process of returning. The shift is however much time it takes to lead up for him to return. And we can't know that. We don't know how long that will take. We know it won't be less than 3.5 whenever it actually starts. Right? But it could be longer than that. We know there's a set time, 3.5 years, that must take place. But it could be longer. If we look in Joshua, A lot of our stuff is coming from Joshua. Probably a reason for that. In 14, 6 through 10, they've been battling and battling. They came in. They had the incident with Achan after they took Jericho, and they fought and they fought. And maybe we don't stop to think about how long these things take, you know. But we're in Joshua 14 now. And the children of Judah came unto Joshua in Gilgal. And Caleb, the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite, said unto him, Thou knowest the thing that Yahweh said unto Moses, the man of God, concerning me and thee in Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of Yahweh, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to spy out the land. And I brought him word again, as it was in mine heart. Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed Yahweh my God. And Moses sware on that day, saying, Surely the land whereon thy feet have trodden shall be thy inheritance, and thy children's forever, because thou hast wholly followed Yahweh my God. And now behold, Yahweh hath kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since Yahweh spake this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me. As my strength was then, even so is my strength now, for war both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give me this mountain whereof Yahweh spake in that day. For thou heard in that day how the Anakim were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so, Yahweh will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as Yahweh said. So he was 40 when the promise was made, and we know they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. And he says that now it's been 45 years, and he's 85. So we know at this point, they were 5 years, and they still hadn't driven everybody out. They still hadn't divided the land for an inheritance. And we don't know how long it went past this, because we're not told. So when this shift actually comes, I believe it's starting. I believe that's what he's saying, is get ready, it's going to come. I think it will be obvious, if not by the end of this year, by the end of next year. It could be 3.5 years from that time. It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years. It's not for us to decide. He decides that. He wants us to prepare. And it has to be individual, and it has to be communal. As the time comes, we're going to need each other more and more. We do pretty good at that, I think, taking care of each other. But as the time comes and it gets harder and harder, we're going to have to take care of each other more and more. And so we have to work on ourselves individually so that we can work together as a group. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, we'll be too weak to carry the load for someone else when that time comes. And so that's, over the 2 weeks, that's the word that he gave me. Prepare, shift is coming, he's going to return, and there's going to be a battle, spiritually and physically, and we have to know our part.